Hello, today I'm here to show you how to remove a rear end from a Mustang 79 through 2004. They're all about the same if you have a live axle rear end, like on this 94 Cobra here, or this Fox body here, 5.0 Fox body, or that 97 GT. Well, I just removed the rear end from the GT today, and I'm going to show you how to do it real quick, or tell you how to do it. There's a nut on the inside of the trunk for the shocks, and there's a little rubber piece. It's right back up in here, this area here. See it right there? And there's another one right there. You have to get that out. There's a nut on top. A wrench will do that, a torque wrench. You're going to have to spin it fast to get it out. Then you take those nuts out, you'll be able to drop that from the top. Then you're going to come down here, and your next set of business is going to be those upper control arms. You're going to put a wrench on one side and an impact socket on the other and knock them out one at a time. Then you're going to lift them up on both sides, pull the nuts out. Then you're going to come back down to the bottom. There's this arm over here. This would be the last thing I would take place, that little quad shock. I take that off last. Now before you loosen up the next bar, there's an emergency brake line here, and it sits in a little hoop of the disc brakes. So you got to grab a vice grip, grab it by this part, and see the cable right here at the edge? Whip the cable out without hurting that little arm that this is twined into. Then there's going to be a C-clamp right behind here. You pull the C-clamp out, carefully pull that out. Before you go to pull the rear end out, you're going to want to remove this. Trust me, it's a big headache if you don't. Now on both sides, you're going to want to remove next both brake lines on the back of the caliper. That's an easy thing. Both sides, you go handle that. Then there's one thing left. I usually put my jack up under the rear end at this point. I have it on stands. You want to do this job on stands to protect yourself and be careful. I'm in dirt. I'm an expert. I know what I'm doing. But anyway, I got it on a jack here, and I have it on stands below. After I have it on jack and jack stands, then I go to the lower control arms on both sides. I usually put a wrench on one side, and on the other side I put an impact socket, and I go ahead and knock them out. I work on one side, and then I move to the other side, and then I go ahead and pull the control arms down, and you gotta knock the bolts out on both sides of the control arms to get the control arms down. You knock them out, and when you knock them out, it's going to be hard. Sometimes you use a hammer, and you hit on both sides of the control arms, and you might have to preload the bottom of the suspension with a jack here on these. This is going to be like the worst part of the whole deal, is getting the lower control arms and getting those bolts up. Sometimes you put the jack up on the lower control arms and take a little tension out, and you can tap it out with a hammer, but placement makes it a pain in the butt. Sometimes you put the impact and you wedge it, and you can pull that nut right out, that bolt right out. Sometimes for some of these you might have to use the breaker bar to get them loose the first thing before your impact or whatever, because it might be rusty like this car. Now the last thing you're going to want to do after these lower control arms, don't fret if this bolt is rusted through and you can't get it out. You got one more opportunity at the front of the car up under where the control arm comes out. So you can do that. Now you're going to have to loosen these on both sides to drop it, either here or either up at front. Now after you do that, there's one last thing you have to do, and there's this quad shock. Now you have the shock already removed, so it's not going to hang on you. You could save that for last and let the shocks hold the rear end from falling on the ground. Or I usually take the shocks out first, and I wedge this out last off the thing with a pry bar, wedge it off, because the quad shock's going to be the only thing holding it. But that's totally your discretion how you want to do that. But for everything you do on this side, you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Make sure you have the car on jack stands before you attempt to do this. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to, the rear end is very heavy. Don't ever put yourself up under the rear end, no matter what, while you're working on this. Protect yourself. Be careful. This is, something you can hurt yourself if you're not doing it correct. So I want to show you basically how you do it. And this job will take you 30 minutes if you're good and you've done it several times. Here's your treasure, what you're getting out. I had a problem with mine. The bolts, the bottom bolts, as you can see down there, I could get them to spin, but I couldn't wedge them out. So I had to go to plan B and go to the fronts there. It worked out. I got it all out. It took me a little longer. It took me an hour. Usually about 30 minutes, 25 minutes. I can have the whole rear end taken apart. But I wanted to show you basically how you remove an 8.8 from 79 to 04 Mustang GTs. Thanks again. Like, watch, and subscribe.